2. And we are recording with Mr. James Howard Kunstler, who I will not call Herr Kunstler. And but before I get started, my man, please introduce yourself. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
I'm from New York City, originally born 73 years ago, if you can believe it. I can hardly believe it when I wake up every morning. I went through the New York City school system. Some of it was good. Some of it was like riot and cell block D. I was a bad student, went to a pretty fourth-rate state university campus in the middle of nowhere. Worked as a newspaper reporter. Started out at the hippie papers in Boston in the 70s. They don't exist anymore, of course. Then started working for daily newspapers. Got a job at Rolling Stone in 74. I only lasted there about a year. I didn't like it. And I decided it was a time in my life to drop out and write books, because that was the programming for somebody with literary aspirations in that time. So I did. I moved back to a place I had lived a while before when I was a newspaper reporter, to Saratoga Springs, New York, an excellent small Main Street town, which I loved, especially after growing up in New York City and feeling overwhelmed by it the whole time I was a child, although it had its amenities. And I produced about 8 novels, didn't get rich. I was still waiting on tables when my 8th novel came out, which is, a pretty strange and weird situation. And then I went back to journalism by happenstance. I just got a call out of the blue from the New York Times Magazine, and they sent me out on a bunch of assignments. And I sold one of the stories that they killed to Simon & Schuster, and that became my first big nonfiction book, which is called The Geography of Nowhere. And it was about the fiasco of suburbia and how it was making American life worse and more difficult, and was terribly problematical for our future. And having written, I wrote 2 or 3 books after that about urban design and architecture. And I became affiliated with the New Urbanist movement, a group of architects and developers and academics and officials who wanted to reform the way we do land development in America, so we could build better places, so that we weren't all living in places that were not worth caring about, which was sort of the essence of the suburban problem. We had created 10,000 places across America that were not worth caring about and not worth living in. And so I couldn't fail to notice, writing those books, that we were probably going to encounter a problem with petroleum as the years went on. And indeed, as a kind of fortuitous thing, in the 90s, a bunch of senior geologists retired out of the oil industry and started publishing their dark and secret thoughts in obscure journals. But that coincided exactly with the rise of the internet. And a lot of their dark and secret thoughts found their way onto the internet. And all of a sudden, the big conversation about peak oil started. And that got me thinking about things. So I ended up writing a book called The Long Emergency, published in 2005. And that was really about the probability for a great deal of trouble down the road with industrial civilization and being able to run it. And it took a while for that to catch up with reality, but now we're there. I have written quite a few books since then. I wrote a 4-book series of novels to try to illustrate or depict in a kind of emotional and graphic way what it would be like to live in a post-economic collapse American town. The first of that series was called The World Made by Hand. And there were 3 subsequent series, all with the same characters who, come in and out of the foreground and the background in the series. And after that, I wrote another nonfiction book, kind of a follow-up to The Long Emergency, called Too Much Magic, about the wishful thinking about technology that really started to gin up after the great financial crash of 2008 and 9. And I've written a couple of books since then, and sort of here we are. Oh, I write a popular political blog called Clusterfuck Nation,
I saw that.
and I've been doing that for quite a while. My audience has been kind of increasing over the years, and but I've also kind of refined the form of my version of what a good blog should be, and I have some basic rules about it. One is, don't ask people to digest too much information or simply prose at one time, and so I keep it fairly compact. And the other thing is, you got to show up regularly. You got to put it out absolutely with regularity.
Yeah.
So people can expect it to be there when they want it to be there, and I do. I never miss it. Even through several surgeries I had in the last 10 years, I just got up in the morning, with tubes sticking out of my chest and wrote a blog.
Yeah. That's kind of my logic with this podcast is, one, I just have a psychopathic work ethic, but two, I've always, when I look, it's like, I love Tim Dillon, the comedian, and I listen to him all the time, but he does an episode once a week. So I've listened through his library like 3 times over, still laugh my ass off. But my logic has been, I never want someone to be out of episodes. So just flood it with every imaginable topic across the spectrum of every possible guest, and do it frequently to the point where they can just dive in and get lost. Like when you get in a hot shower, there's nothing worse than when the hot water starts to run out, versus you stay at a nice hotel. If you want to do a 10-minute shower, if you want to do 45 minutes, you are the limiting reagent. You never got to worry about the water, which I guess kind of pulls into, oil and fuel, but
yeah,
you get the point. So I don't know where I want to go with this. I was going to say fuel, but about architecture, because I never really get anyone on here that enjoys architecture.
Well, I'll give you this basic breakdown.
All right.
On how how that whole thing worked. I was writing these stories for the New York Times about, they seem to largely be about the problems that were arising in suburbia and in land development, especially the land development problems in Vermont, which is a rural state. I don't live in Vermont, but I'm only 10 miles away from the state line. And there was a New York Times editor who lived over in Bennington. He's passed away since then, named James Atlas, kind of a well-known literary figure of the 80s and 90s. And he wanted me to write about all these problems they were having with overdevelopment in Vermont. And, I'd been disturbed by how, how we were living in America since I was a kid. There was just, I spent 3 years of my childhood in suburbia, but I spent the best years of childhood in suburbia between the ages of 5 and 8.
Yeah.
When you don't really need a town.
Yeah.
You don't really need connection to even the rudiments of adult life and trade and commerce and anything. I mean, my only connection to trade was buying a Coke from a Coke machine in a gas station on my way home from school.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, in any case, I identified this as something that was a terrible problem. And so we've created these places that aren't worth caring about. And they represent a tremendous economic problem, a social problem, a spiritual problem. In any dimension, they're making our lives miserable in America. They've destroyed our sense of community. Because of the logistics of suburbia, children are not able to develop their personal sovereignty and moving their carcass from point A to point B by themselves, without the assistance of the family chauffeur. The housing subdivisions that people live in are not real towns, and they often don't even know who lives next door to them. It's a pretty dreadful situation. And the basic problem is that it's a living arrangement with no future, because we're not going to have the petroleum to run it, and there really aren't any substitutes for that, at least not now, and perhaps not ever. We don't really know. I mean, we've got a bunch of wishes that we will be able to run advanced techno-industrial civilizations by other means, but very little evidence that we can. including, we have very highly refined solar and wind technology. But the basic fact is that unless that stuff rests on a kind of foundation of fossil fuel, we're not going to be able to fabricate the hardware for it and run it. And, the situation is somewhat similar with nuclear. You need a kind of fossil fuel platform for that to run off of, because you need diesel fuel and natural gas and other things to run this stuff in the reactors, especially when the reactors are down, and you have to keep cooling the uranium, and you have to keep on managing the waste pools and all that stuff. So that's very problematical. So I came to the conclusion that we're probably going to have to seriously downscale American life and all of the systems that we depend on. It's probably not going to be something that we're going to do voluntarily and in an orderly way. In fact, that's why I wrote the long emergency, because I concluded that the descent from the standard of living that we have now is liable to be pretty messy, and was going to entail a lot of losses and probably a lot of pain. And we're beginning to see the first really the first act of this in living color now. We're really seeing our systems beginning to get into trouble, and as they do, their failures ramify the other systems that are interdependent with them. You start running into a problem with energy, for example, with the oil industry. There's kind of a basic equation that's useful to know. It may be overly simple, but I'll just say it anyway, that oil over $75 a barrel tends to crush economies, and oil under $75 a barrel tends to crush oil companies. And that's sort of where we're at now. We've been oscillating back and forth between very expensive oil and ultra cheap oil, and each oscillation produces different effects and different kinds of damage to our society. So now we're in an upcycle where the price of oil is going up. That's going to affect economic activity, and especially anything involved with transport and trucking and all that. We're beginning to see trucking get into all kinds of trouble from other angles. For example, the rules that have been somewhat foolishly put in place in California, for example, that your truck has to be so up to date technologically that drivers or owners who have a rig that's more than 3 years old aren't able to do their jobs and use their equipment. And that kind of clashes with the financial problem that you buy a giant tractor trailer, you've got the equivalent of a mortgage to pay on it. You're not going to pay it off in 3 years. It's a big loan. You got to run that thing for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And if the law says, oh, well, you can't run an old truck anymore, all of a sudden the trucking industry, the fleet starts to dissolve. You're seeing other similarly weird systems, collisions and failures in the automobile industry. A lot of people thought that the that mass motoring was going to get into trouble simply on the basis of the fuel that you use to power the car. So the wishful thinking there was, well, if we have a problem with diesel or gasoline, we'll just use hydrogen or batteries or something else. We'll just switch it out. And it turns out, first of all, that's problematical in and of itself for technical problems. But it also turns out that that's not what's killing the mass motoring system now. What's killing it is the terrible trouble that the middle class is having staying solvent. And it becomes harder and harder to find enough credit-worthy customers who can buy a car on a long-term loan. or who can qualify for a long-term loan. So the car companies have bent over backwards to find new and creative ways to get unqualified buyers to buy cars, and they've got 7-year loans on used cars. And that ends up being kind of crazy. And even, in the last couple of years, they've gotten so desperate that when they repo a car from somebody they sold a car to who stopped making the payments, as soon as they repo the car, they offer the guy a new car loan for another used car. So the desperation out there is pretty deep. So what I'm saying is, of course, is that the stress now in the car industry is actually not coming so much from the fuel problem. It's coming from the failures in our financial arrangements and our inability to maintain a middle class that has enough surplus income to do the things that we've been used to doing for the last 50 or 60 years. So we're faced with all these systems problems, and I don't want to get, fly off into the ether too far.
No,
but
I like it, man. Who gives a shit? Keep going.
all right. Well, but I just want to say that, these issues also ramify into our food supply and, how we're going to continue doing industrial agriculture. And it gets pretty deep and thick.
Do you think everything we're seeing is a natural feedback cycle from Earth? Not like a conscious thing, but just a natural feedback cycle from, we're expanding exponentially on a finite amount of resources, and the amount of energy per person used is also going up exponentially, or has been going up exponentially. Do you think this is just a natural feedback system that, only a supercomputer could understand, but nonetheless,
there's no question that it's a feedback system.
But my question is it natural, or do you think that any amount of this is engineered by, and not myself to float off, but is there a group of people that are going, hey, we're running towards a cliff, we don't need
look,
Kissinger,
there's a lot
we don't need the useless eaters?
Yeah, there's a lot of sentiment about that. Well, there are two things that you're saying there, and I'll include something that you didn't necessarily imply, but just for the heck of it, the idea that the Earth itself is a self-correcting organism.
Yeah.
That's kind of the Gaia theory of James Lovelock. I don't know, I don't know what I think about that actually. I'm could be, maybe, but we're going to go through this stuff that we're going through, whether that's true or not,
whether it's a conscious self-correcting thing, or whether it's just a bunch of matter bumping around. It's the same system.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that there, that there are effects of causes, and that there is a certain kind of basic fundamental physics involved. And you're correct that we're living in a planet of finite resources. That's well established, and there are many arguments and many well-known people who make those arguments now, including Chris Martenson and Gail Tverberg, and other people who have been in the whole peak oil discussion for the last 15 years, and we know about all that. Whether or not there's some clack of James Bond villains out there like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, whether they're trying to throw a wrench into the machinery of civilization is another question.
It seems like they are, man. And to me, I think the more complex a conspiracy, the less likely. Like Manhattan Project was pretty insane in itself. Like, I get that. Stealth technology, nuclear subs. I mean, there's a lot of complex stuff out there.
Yeah, but they weren't conspiracies.
But yeah. Well, I mean, kind of they were. I mean, they were all conspiring together. But to me, it's almost a little too convenient, isn't it? That the World Economic Forum, like, all of a sudden there's just this evil German guy who like dresses in all black.
Yeah, that's why he's a James Bond villain,
That's what I mean. But doesn't it almost seem kind of out of central casting? Like something's
something's not. They even put a Persian cat on his lap.
That's what I mean is, like, you see the president, everyone's like, it's just a figurehead. It's the military industrial complex and the Iron Triangle. Those are the ones that run it. I see Klaus Schwab and I'm like, this is too convenient. He's too convenient of a figure that we can all hate and agree upon. And then we hate him and then we don't do anything because we go, there's the guy. he
Well,
sells.
he's exactly the kind of character that Hollywood would create if they were going to make a movie about what we're going through.
Exactly.
Sure.
What do you think about all that, man? Is the World Economic, because they seem to, I mean, they're pretty open about, their ability to penetrate every nation's government, which I don't think is really a unique idea. I think that's probably been going on since
Well,
the
it's
dawn of
hard to
time.
believe that some schmuck like Klaus Schwab sitting over there in Switzerland
He just got it
controls
done.
the world.
That's what I mean. Is like,
I mean, it is weird, but I'll tell you, the problem that I'm having is that so much of this behavior, this insane behavior that we're seeing around the world in the response to the COVID virus seems so coordinated
yeah,
that it's hard to figure how it could be that coordinated.
yeah.
It may be as simple as, the mass formation
Psychosis.
theory,
Yeah.
that, it affects nations as well as individual human beings.
Yeah.
And there may be something to that, but it is so deeply irrational. It's really breathtaking. So to answer your question as simply as possible, I find it difficult to believe that there's a Klaus Schwab, James Bond villain conspiracy out there.
Yeah.
I do think Bill Gates is a sinister character.
Yeah.
And one wonders why he hasn't been in front of a Senate committee lately.
Yeah.
It seems like he's got a lot to answer for. But of course, the Joe Biden administration is running, the party of chaos, the Democratic Party is running the government machinery. And so they're not going to probably address anything serious. So I don't know. There are many things that are going on now that I would have thought very unlikely earlier in my lifetime. I never would have imagined that that a situation could be engineered to allow such an unfit person as Joe Biden to sit in the White House. Arguably, I'd say
he's not in charge.
Well, of course he isn't. Arguably, I'd say that Donald Trump was not exactly fit for office either, temperamentally.
Sure.
I didn't vote for him in 2016. I did vote for him in 2020 because
same as
I disliked.
Me. I didn't do 2016, but I did 2020.
Yeah, well, I was so opposed to what the Democratic Party represented that I just thought, you got to vote against them. But I have felt over the last 5 years since Donald Trump jumped on into the scene that, he was a less than really desirable figure to run the country because he was so childish.
Yeah, you can't. There is something to be said about being presidential, and I know it sounds like such a pearl clutch. And I know the counter argument is tell that to the people who don't have jobs because of NAFTA. They don't give a shit how childish someone is.
Well, yeah,
sure,
that's true.
Sure, I get it.
And I would say that there are a couple of things I would say in his defense, even though I wasn't altogether happy with him being president. I'd say that, I agreed with many of his policies.
Sure.
I thought that he was rather brave and terrible and very resilient, considering the abuse that he was subject to.
I mean,
very unfair. And, that's a whole subject in and of itself. But, on the whole, I would like to see somebody else represent the opposition to the party of chaos now.
I mean, I would say, I also think Trump was funny. There's just a child. There's just the child in me that's also like, he's just kind of funny. That being said, I would say there are probably three objective things that I would sign off on, right? Withdrew us from the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, as soon as he got in office.
Mm-hmm.
No new wars. He didn't end them. No new ones. All right. And energy independence. Those are three objective things that I think are.
Yeah, although I think the energy independence thing was kind of
you think it was
a phantom,
illusory.
It was illusory. Yeah, because the whole shale oil thing in itself it wasn't exactly a scam, but it wasn't quite what it seemed to be to many people. And I'm sorry to say that, most of America doesn't really understand how shale oil worked and what it was about. But, it really came on. We had horizontal drilling and fracking technology for a long time before the shale oil miracle came along. The difference was they used to actually use explosives. Hold on.
You're good. You can take it.
Hold on a sec. Who's this?
You're quite all right.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Some fucking robot. Anyway, I'm
this
going to
is-
start that
was
over again.
that
I'm
was
going to start
Schwab.
that
That was
module.
that was Schwab. He's trying to
That was
interrupt.
Klaus.
That fucker's trying to
Fuck
interrupt
you,
us.
Klaus.
He's
And-
he's knocking on my door. He's trying to get. He wants to come in. You can take
Fuck
his,
you and the Schwein you rode in on.
that
The
German
Schweinhund.
that German asshole dude. His what is
Wait a minute. I want to finish this.
okay? The
thought.
shale oil. The shale oil. We'll get back to Klaus.
Yeah. So shale oil wasn't what most Americans think it was. Starting around 2009, it really ramped up. You know, we had all this great technology. We knew how to do fracking. We were doing it with explosives before that. And now we discovered we can do it with high pressure water
Mhm.
and, you know, use granules of sand to hold the fractures open. And you know, you blast open this impervious rock where the oil doesn't move through it as it does through a regular sandstone. And, you know, you get shale. Here's the deal. Conventional oil wells of the, you know, the kind that we had in Oklahoma in 1950, you know, they cost about $400,000 in today's money to drill a well. They produced thousands of barrels a day for decades. And they were like cash registers.
Yeah.
But shale oil wells cost between $6 and $12 million a well to drill and frack out and everything and service. And they produce maybe, you know, 100 or 200 barrels a day for the first year. And then they fall by 60%. And then after 3 years, they're done. So it's a very, very different kind of profile and a different kind of investment return. And the problem with shale oil was that it didn't make any money. We were living in this strange financial environment of zero interest rates. And so people were desperate to find investments that would yield more. And shale oil seemed to be one of them. So they piled into that, provided hundreds of billions of dollars of capital to the shale producers who went out and drilled a whole lot of wells and fracked them and goosed the oil out of the ground, you know, and especially out of the sweet spots, which had not been exploited before. They were the new sweet spots in the shale. And we produced a well of a lot of oil. So that, you know, between 2009, 2019, we finally got up to surpass the old conventional oil peak of 1970, which was just under 10 million barrels a day. By 2013, we were producing, by 2019, we were producing 13 million barrels a day, roughly. And I think about 6 or 7 or 8 of that was shale. Our conventional wells continue to decline the whole time. And so they really produced this miraculous production of surpassing the old 50-year-old peak of oil. The problem was that they couldn't make a red cent doing it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with and I'm not even sure that it matters that the COVID thing intervened. It might have happened nonetheless, but having proved that they couldn't make any money, they all of a sudden had trouble attracting new finance. So now it's much, much harder for the shale producers to get new financing to continue the same operations that they were doing before. And now that they've exploited many of the sweet spots in the Permian Basin and Bakken and elsewhere, there are fewer sweet spots left for them to exploit. So the quality of the resource is going down. And so based on those two things alone, you know, the lack of financing and the disappearance of good places to drill, and also the rapidity of the depletion of each well and the cost of drilling, I'd say that we are definitely on the downside of shale oil. And there's no way that we're going to get back to anything like energy independence. It was it was an illusion, and it was a stunt, and it lasted a few years, and now it's over.
It's yeah, it's like never drinking coffee and then taking a caffeine pill at midnight and saying I have sleep independence. And it's like
There you
it's a
go.
window. It's like the next guy, whether you like him or not, is gonna look like he fucked it all up. In reality, he's just crashing from a system that's far larger than any one president or any one nation, really. It's a
And Mr. Trump was lucky because he came into office in 2017 just before shale peaked, and he got
he
2 more years of
caught a
zero
wave, caught a good
interest.
wave.
Yeah, zero interest financing, and so by the time he was being persecuted for Russiagate in 2018, we were also at peak oil production at the final peak. So that's where we're at with that, and it probably means because our conventional wells are also depleting, and because we're entering a period now of probably of capital scarcity as we get in deeper and deeper into financial disorder that is coming now bubbling up as a result of a lot of perverse activity over the last 20 years, including quantitative easing and, the central banks buying all the securities that nobody wants, and, and all the trouble with debt and bonding and all that stuff has created a tremendous set of distortions in the financial markets that are going to have to be worked out.
Yeah.
And, the term workout actually implies a great deal of pain.
Yeah.
It's like, when you're going bankrupt in a company or personally, you go through a workout with the bank. And that means that, you lose a lot of your assets and you come out the other end poorer than you went in.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where we're at with that.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of, it's what I want to say is have you read Private Empire by Steve Call about ExxonMobil?
No.
I think you'd enjoy that. I think you'd enjoy that a lot. So for the bubble of finances, though, it's got me thinking again to Tim Dillon, the comedian. He had this guest, Ray Kump, who's just like he's pretty brilliant. I mean, he's just like this fat animal with a lisp, and it's hilarious. But he's also brilliant. But he had this good point where he goes, it's not backed, like the dollar's not backed by gold, right? I mean, with FDR, with Nixon, or FDR with the was it Bretton Woods conference, and then Nixon closing the gold window.
Well, he was dead when that happened, but I think Harry Truman was president when Bretton Woods happened.
Bretton Woods and then Nixon, FDR, then and then Truman, and then Nixon, right? Closing.
Well, what happened was that FDR confiscated gold.
And, yeah, made it illegal for everyone to own. Yeah,
and really kind of ended the relationship between gold and the dollar. Well, I don't know. You could say Nixon did too in 1971, when all these other nations started to get nervous about whether there was any gold in Fort Knox, and they started demanding withdrawals. It started with the French actually under de Gaulle, and that spooked Nixon, and he closed the gold window, and so that ended for good the relationship between gold and the dollar.
Which Ray Kump brings up. He goes, "What is it backed by?" And the reality is, he goes, "It's backed by the gun. It's backed by the U.S. military, the biggest, baddest military in the history of the world,
otherwise known as the full faith and credit of the United States." But
hey, you say one way, I say the other. You say fear, I say.
Well,
love,
I left out
fear.
The last part: the full faith and credit, or we'll kick your ass.
The full faith and credit. The hey, make payments and we'll make sure nothing happens to your business. Capiche? That kind of full faith.
Hey,
but I mean, it makes me think of Mark Bowden who wrote Black Hawk Down. Yeah. I mean, he talks in the beginning about how, we have these progressive values in society, but he goes, in the vast majority of the world, power flows from the barrel of a gun. And that is our base instinct. We can do this quantitative easing. We can do this formal relations. What does it all come down to? It comes down to who can kick the shit out of everybody, and for better or worse. I mean, I love the United States. I'm very biased towards it, but just like let's detach ourselves from it. It's who has the most. When it all goes to shit, It's who has the, in a post-apocalyptic world, it's who has a compound and a bunch of ammo, food, water, and antibiotics.
Well,
So
even short of an apocalyptic world, this is basically a world full of organisms who are in constant competition for the resources at hand,
yeah.
and it
I
can
used
get
it as
ugly.
I use it as an extreme example. But
Yeah.
what the extreme example shows is what the actual foundation is. Once we burn off all the fog of we got the markets and there's crypto and NFTs, what it really comes down to is, yeah, we need protein, carbohydrates, and fats. We need H2O. We need vitamins and minerals. We need a certain level of health care and basic care, as well as shelter and to stay away from the elements, not die of exposure. That's what it really is, right? We're a bunch of meat machines with protoplasmic computers. That's what it is. Like, cut it all out. That's what it is. As it seems like we're kind of burning off the formalities of what we're doing because we're being forced to, with oil scarcity, with pandemics, whether real or created, or an upcoming war or already going on war if that escalates. I mean, are we what we see is, at a certain point, does the mask just fall off when we realize there is a limited amount? And do we just go, we have in the post-apocalyptic world, you have your bunker, your fortress, and I come up to you and go, Jim, I really need some food, man. When push comes to shove and you're sitting behind a belt-fed machine gun in a moat and you're going, no, I'm taking care of my loved ones. And I'm going, but it's not, and then you just blow me to pieces. Is that what we're going to see? Are we going to see the barbaric face of true organic creatures vying for resources? Is that what we're going to see? And in which case, was it the smartest thing ever? This is just one hypothesis, to go into massive amounts of debt, building up the biggest military ever, so that when the money system did fall, we have the barrel of the gun, for better or worse. Do you think that that's what it's going to be, is who has the biggest weapons when push comes to shove?
Well, I don't think I don't think we're heading into anything like a Mad Max world, which would be probably an extension beyond even the situation you're talking about. Is there liable to be conflict? Well, there's a pretty fair possibility that there'll be conflict between the great powers. But I would kind of dread that outcome.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? We're beginning to see a situation now in Ukraine where we're in the fog of war, and it's very hard to put the picture together with the kind of propaganda that we're subjected to at the moment. But I think that there's something else in the background, which I might have mentioned at the very beginning, that the real pressing dynamic before us is going to be the need to downscale civilized life, simplify it, and localize it. That's the macro trend, in my opinion. That's where we're heading one way or another. Now, whether the journey there is terribly disorderly and violent is one question. I think that there's a chance that a lot of things might fall apart in a way that it won't necessarily lead to widespread violence of the kind that you're describing, but rather just simply our systems won't operate very well.
Yeah.
And we're going to find ourselves kind of marooned in our own little islands of civilization, or less than civilization, to work it out locally as we can.
Yeah.
And a lot of this has to do with questions like, can we maintain these giant electric grids? How transient is this phenomenon that we call the internet? Now, everybody assumes that the internet's a permanent installation in the human condition. To me, I think it's such a complex set of arrangements that I would expect that it would be among the first things to go down.
Absolutely. It's
So,
the most delicate.
So, I wouldn't make any assumptions. Like when I hear people talking about Bitcoin, And I think, okay, that's great. How are you going to access your wallet, when when the internet's not working?
There's an EMP or a coronal mass
Yeah.
ejection.
And it doesn't even have to get that bad. I mean, all you really
Just be
need,
the internet down.
yeah, or you need, all you need are, interruptions in the service. If you're living in a culture where the electricity is only on for 4 hours a day, and there are plenty of countries where that happens, we tend to call them third world countries, but it nonetheless is true, what if that becomes the case in advanced countries? I mean, Germany right now is in this ridiculous situation where, in order to pretend to play along with the United States and
NATO.
support this fictitious construction called NATO, they have to deprive themselves of the chance of being able to heat their houses and eat hot food, indefinitely into the future.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so insane. But the fact of the matter is, they really don't have any energy resources to speak of their own.
Mhm.
They have some coal. They got the remnants of what used to be a pretty good coal supply, but it's not what it used to be. They get their gas and their oil from Russia. And if they want to start a fight with Russia and not get Russian gas, they're going to sit in the cold and eat bratwurst, cold bratwurst in a dark room.
Yeah.
So, you could see that going on, in many European countries in, 6 months from now.
Now, actually, I'm gonna do to you what I do to most of my guests. You're gonna monologue as I go to the restroom, and I'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome to Kunstler Cast.
Well, I'm not sure how to proceed here without any prompting. I'll just wait for Tommy to come back. And look at the chickens outside. They're out behind my office window here. 3 of them scratching around, trying to have fun on a cloudy day. Not too cold out there, about 34 degrees. And everybody seems happy. No hawks coming down. No possums or raccoons out there for the moment.
Don't hear you monologuing.
Yeah, I really I
Shows up.
didn't have a prepared monologue. So
Nobody does, and I do that to them. It's not planned. I just have to go to the restroom, and so
well, a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Well, listen, if there was no monologue, I don't want to hear anybody bitching. It's not live, so just hit fast forward by 30 seconds. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear
But
it.
you're going to edit this, aren't you?
Not that. No. Yeah.
Really?
Just yeah, sometimes I do. No, sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. So the problem with being permanently banned from YouTube is I can only upload to Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey, who have a max file size of 4 gigabytes. With Zoom, if you take, let's say this, an hour-long discussion will probably be about half a gig. If you then take it and splice something out of it and then stitch it together in any movie editor, it magically somehow goes up to about 5 gigabytes.
God damn it.
It's the dumbest. I don't understand it. So if I was still on YouTube, I'd splice it out, which I normally did. But because I got to keep it under, I don't know, man. Whoever the audio, the Spotify version will be spliced out. But anyone watching it,
let me ask you a question. I personally don't have time to watch video podcasts that much.
I never watch.
The ones that I listen to, I just listen to the audio.
Yeah.
So why not just go to audio? Just, just get yourself out of the picture. We don't have to see you flapping your gums.
You don't need to see my stupid face. Well, some people, my stupid fuck, it just turns into an insult. This dipshit. And you're like, all right, let's take it. This asshole in a leather chair. Fuck this guy. Like, all right. You're like, damn, man.
I think maybe you're Klaus Schwab.
Klaus Schwab.
In your leather chair. Do you have a Persian cat on your lap?
You'll owe nothing. You'll be happy.
I am
It's
already happy.
I'm happy now with the things I do own,
That's
Klaus.
right. I got a
Thank
lot
you
of
very
shit.
much. Yeah, yeah, I like what I have now, Klaus. But some people love, they just love to watch. I never watch. I don't watch anything. I listen. I don't need to watch shit.
Yeah,
Let me
because
listen.
I'm always doing shit.
I mean, that's why I can't. I can barely read. That's not true. I can read fine, but I listen to audiobooks because I gotta do shit, dude. I can't sit down. I gotta go do laundry. I gotta go get groceries. I listen to audiobooks, go to the gym, and go do
Yeah,
stuff.
well, I'm doing stuff even more down to earth, man. I'm on this 3-acre homestead with gardens and chickens and fruit trees, and I'm
That
constantly
sounds
like,
wonderful.
it's, I mean, I did it because of what I was writing about. I thought, well, maybe I ought to like get onto a place where I
Practice
can
what
grow
you
my own
preach.
food and stuff. And I found this cool property that was literally like an eighth of a mile from the last street in the little town that I live in. And I live in this old factory village, like a New England factory village on a tributary of the Hudson River
Mm-hmm.
in far, far upstate New York, near the Vermont border. And uh, I found this 3-acre place 11 feet outside the village tax district. So that's an extra $1,000 a year I don't have to pay.
Get fucked,
But
Uncle Sam.
I wanted to get a little homestead going, and I put in the garden. It's pretty substantial, and I got the chickens going, and I planted about 30 fruit trees, and blueberries, currants, gooseberries, grapes, and all that stuff is cool theoretically, but what it turns out you have to attend to all of it.
Yeah, but see, that's what I would. That's what I would like. I mean, I'm single. I don't have kids. I don't have pets. I don't have debts. I'm in a tiny apartment right now, trying to turn the podcast. Right now, the main endeavors. I have to get this big enough to make money, dude. I don't want to go towards the city. I want to go even farther. I'm not in a big place
Where
now.
are you exactly?
I'm in Maryland, and I'm in like a somewhat. Well, I guess I'm gonna move soon, so it doesn't matter. I'm in Salisbury, and
Oh yeah, I know
and
where that is.
yeah, I'm gonna move. Probably in the next month or so, so I'm not worried about any psychopaths. Um, but I mean, I look at like like where my parents are. They're in New England. They've got all the
Where?
they've got all the firewood. Well, for their own privacy, I won't say, but they've
Oh,
got all their own. I don't think they give a shit, but I'd rather err on the side of. They've got all their own firewood. They've got solar. They've got diesel. They're growing stuff now. You can go outside. You could shoot a deer every day for the next 5 decades. It's like that's what I look at, and I'm like, to me, that is more attractive than any like LA penthouse or something. Because I look at where the world's going in my short
yeah.
life. I look at where things have been going since really when I started this podcast, December 2019. I think the day before COVID hit the US.
Oh man.
Yeah, bad luck. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is all so fragile to me. And I've had on tons of military guys who have retired and they've gone out to the middle of nowhere. They've done the podcast and they're like, yeah, they're like, I just tend to my farm all day. Like, that's all I do. They're like, but it's entirely self sufficient.
Yeah.
And you said you got to tend to it. But I also I do this podcast entirely by myself. I schedule, I edit, I produce, I do everything.
Yeah.
I like it. I like doing laundry. I like making my bed. I like making dinner. To me, there's a sort of peace tending to the quote unquote farm.
Yeah, I like being real busy myself, and I have the other added amenity of being able to walk into town. I can be on Main Street in 8 minutes, but the problem is the town's real beat.
Yeah.
And now I do have a theory about how this is working out, and it goes sort of like this. And I get this from having written 3 books about urban design and hung out with architects and developers for all those years I was writing about that stuff. But the big cities are definitely in trouble.
Oh,
The business model for a skyscraper city is broken now. You can't run a 60-story office building at 30% occupancy and cover your taxes and your mortgages and all of the things that are entailed in that. So that's a big problem. And just basically, the great metroplex cities of America have exceeded their plausible scale, and they're going to have to contract. Now, they're not going to disappear, most of them, because most of them occupy important geographical sites, probably all of them, really, one
Well,
way
yeah,
or
that's how they
another.
started. Yeah.
But some of them are, they're not all equally important. So, a place like Detroit, which occupies a strategic site on a river between two Great Lakes, will continue to be an important place. It'll never be the city of 1950 that it was, again, and as far ahead as you can see. New York City has the best harbor on the East Coast, maybe, arguably. And there are a lot of other really great harbors, but New York City is going to have to get smaller. Plus, it's overburdened with megastructures and skyscrapers that are not going to be the business model for running them is going to fail. By the way, the residential skyscraper must be thought of as an accessory to the office skyscraper. So if the office skyscraper is failing as a business model, the residential skyscraper is going to fail too.
Well, the
And
residentials are for money laundering,
well,
offshore
yeah, they're
money.
partly, but they weren't at first.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Really what happened was, I grew up in a massive 17-story Manhattan apartment building that occupied at least a quarter of a big block on the east side of Manhattan. And it was built in 1929 or so. And, it was owned by the developer who built it for 35, 40 years. And they collected rents. And that's how they maintained that building, the income, the revenue from the rents. That's what paid it. But by the 1970s, we had entered this phase of history where all of a sudden we were turning every megastructure into a condo. And that's called deconstructing the rights of real estate, where you have a building with 100 units, and instead of it being one tax unit or one ownership unit, you break it up into 100 ownership units, and then you form a property owners association to manage all that. The problem with that is that it worked real great as you're going up the mountain of debt and getting into a more indebted country every year for 50 years. But when you reach your maximum debt problem and you have to start going downhill on debt defaults, that whole condominium structure falls apart, because it takes very few property owners to default on their apartments to wreck a homeowners association. So that's going to be a problem. Suburbia is going to be a complete write-off. Most of it was built out of shitty materials anyway.
Yeah.
That were not destined to last. Actually, the shittiness of the materials has accelerated over the last 50 years. So that, the materials were semi-shitty when they built Levittown out of, 2x4s and sheetrock. But now they're building suburban mech houses out of strand board and vinyl, right? So they're basically made of plastic and glue and sawdust.
Yeah.
They're not going to last. All these tilt up strip mall buildings, the muffler shops and the fast food joints and all that crap, that's not going to last. So, and of course it requires this massive, mass motoring system in order to make suburbia work.
Yeah.
So it's totally toast. So where are people going to go? Well, first of all, they're going to need to be near a place where they can get food. And what I think you'll see is that as we were speaking much earlier about systems failures ramifying each other, we're going to see the fossil fuel failures start to ramify the food system, the industrial agriculture system, where you have these gigantic 4,000-acre farms, and their biggest inputs are,
water,
herbicide, fertilizers, and their other biggest input is borrowed money in order to get those crops in. So if all of a sudden you find yourself living in a financial climate where capital is getting scarcer, and it's harder to borrow money, then that financial model, that business model for doing farming is not going to succeed. And I think, the bottom line is we're probably going to see farms having to also contract, get smaller, be managed at a smaller level with more human attention and less mechanical stuff and less fossil fuels and probably less fossil fuel based herbicides and fertilizers and all of that. We're going to have to go back to something that is quite different from what we're doing today. So the bottom line is the action in America is moving from the big cities and the suburbs to the small towns in places that have a meaningful relationship with farming.
So we've just been playing a global game of resource and capital musical chairs, and music
Yeah.
might stop soon. It's
Yeah, well, it's turned from a game of musical chairs into a Chinese fire drill.
yeah. On the note, because I do love skyscrapers, have since I was little. Don't know why.
I fucking hate them.
Oh, all right. Well, this
Well, I grew
podcast
up
is
among
over.
them, you know?
Well, I see. I didn't. So
Yeah, there you go.
I loved reading about. I mean, the first ones in Chicago. I loved the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, 40 Wall
Well,
Street.
there's something magnificent about them, you know, and especially the
Absolutely.
early ones.
They're
know, when you
our cathedrals. They're our modern. It's the same awe
Yeah.
that people in the 1500s saw.
Well, when you look at something like the Woolworth Building in Manhattan, you
Oh,
know, and these
Beautiful.
magnificent skyscrapers from the first decades of the 20th century,
Beautiful.
you know, they're just they're amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, when you get into the 1960s and the modernists have come in, and really every new building is just an aluminum
shit.
box,
It's
you know,
shit.
with
It's just a big
with
mirror.
glass curtain walls.
Yeah.
You know, what you're seeing there is simply nothing more than maximizing the amount of rents you can get off the footprint of a building.
Mm-hmm. With the
And by that, I
setback
mean the
rules,
footprint of a building is the lot that you're building it on.
Yeah.
If it's 100 feet by 100 feet. You know, what do you want to do? Just put a 5-story building up and collect those rents, or put up a 60-story building and collect 60 stories worth of rents?
Yeah.
And you know, the decision for many, it would be obvious if you had the means to do that, if you had the capital to do that.
Yeah.
And if you know, you can do it under the rules. So that's what happened in Manhattan and other, you know, downtowns. But
Yeah.
there are a few places in America that did it where, you know, the way Manhattan did it. Chicago is a kind of second, but you know, it's pretty far behind.
Well, Manhattan was just a perfect storm of that burgeoning city and on an island, for all intents and purposes, on an island. Like, so
Yeah.
there was truly, you could only sprawl so much. Yeah, you could make bridges, but everyone wants to be on the island. And then you have that problem with the bedrock between lower and upper Manhattan. So you get these like hyper condensed sections, midtown and lower.
It wasn't a problem. It was actually an advantage because it made great foundations. You know, they were going into
the big gap in skyscrapers between lower and midtown is
well,
because
yeah,
the bedrock's actually even lower there.
Yeah.
But
okay, I take your point.
Yeah. But but like, you know, something like the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, the Woolworth, like, they're beautiful. They're also going to last. They're made out of limestone, right? I mean, granted, they have steel internals.
Well, no,
but
there's I think there's steel skeleton buildings for
Yeah.
sure, but you know, you know, one of the problems we're going to run into is that first of all, the business model for those buildings has failed, but we're also going to have problems with modular fabricated building materials to even renovate them. You know, they do have to be changed out every you know, 30 years or so. I saw a kind of vision of the future 10 years ago when I went to Johannesburg, South Africa. It was really it was certainly interesting and kind of creepy. When apartheid ended in South Africa, all of the corporate tenants in downtown Johannesburg left and built kind of fortified suburban office campuses because they were kind of afraid of how things were going to turn out. And I'd say Johannesburg is kind of comparable to downtown Denver in scale, you know, the number of blocks and the number of skyscrapers. If you need an image, it's about like that. So when I went there, the skyscraper office buildings had all been abandoned. They were occupied by squatters who were living in these like 40-story walk-ups without elevators, you know, without any services. They had never really reconfigured the insides of the buildings for living. You know, they still had one bathroom on every floor, and I doubt the bathrooms were even working.
Yeah.
It was just the most bizarre thing. So you're in this old downtown that has turned into kind of a sci-fi
Yeah.
wasteland of abandoned office buildings, with squatters in them. And it was just the craziest thing. So I don't know if that's exactly, where we're going in the US. You'd think maybe from seeing what goes on in San Francisco, that that might be the next thing for San Francisco,
Yeah.
but who knows?
I'm friends with a Delta Force guy that is doing security, retired Delta Force guy that's just doing security in San Francisco right now. He sends me pictures. I think he's just getting paid through the ass. And he's sending me pictures. It's disgusting. It's genuinely disgusting.
Is he doing like private home security
Oh no,
or
it's for like huge, like
corporate?
no, it's like huge, no, huge like department stores where the cops won't
Oh,
respond. So they're just like,
yeah,
fuck it, we'll hire our own. So they get this badass mercenary, and he's in there
yeah.
just like, yeah, he doesn't. He's like, I'm not the cops. Like, I can respond. And but he just sends me pictures of these like fentanyl zombies who are just, I mean, literal shit dropping out of like their pants ankles, walking and
Yeah.
just bumping in, and it's just like, dude, it's a cancerous cell that's gonna infect. I was gonna say, you can go for like another like, I don't know, 10 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, then we'll wrap it up there.
Sure.
So if necessity, I've had on Vince Houghton, who's Dr. Vince Houghton, who is like the head of the National Spy Museum. He wrote a good book called Nuking the Moon and Other Insane Cold War Plans That Never Got Off the Drawing Board. It's great. But there's a quote from it, and it's, necessity is the mother of it, or yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, and desperation is the drunk uncle. Desperation is what we saw in the Cold War, where it's like, now what if we did this? As
Yeah.
we get to this point, unless of course there's just a massive die-off of humanity, either through natural or planned, Klaus, uh, just systems running into each other and accelerating one another's collapse. If we don't have that, or maybe in concert with that, are we going to see something? The desperation, are we going to see something? Is it, are the world's resources pooled into the ITER, that collaborative fusion project? Are we going to just be forced to make conventional fission reactors work? Is there going to be just something, or is this going to hasten the departure from the planet, from either the elite
Oh,
or
it'll be
the
both.
desperate? Yeah.
Well, I don't think it'll hasten our departure from the planet for other worlds. I don't believe for a moment we're going to be colonizing Mars.
The elite might.
That's absurd. It just ain't going to happen. It's another one of those kind of wishful, fairy tales that's not worth even talking about.
That's kind of my logic, is like, for a while I always thought, I was like, the elite are going to flee the planet and go terraform
Yeah,
Mars. And then I was like,
forget it.
wait, what would be easier? Just kill off
Forget about
everybody.
it.
Yeah. Just kill everybody here.
Well,
What?
that may happen.
Yeah.
We haven't talked much about the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's becoming apparent despite the incredible tides of propaganda
Yeah.
and bullshit that we're subjected to. It's becoming apparent that these vaccines are very bad for people. They're unhealthy. They're hurting people. They may end up killing a lot of people. They've already killed a lot of people, but they may kill a whole lot more people. And I don't know if you saw this. There was a thing that came out about 4 years ago that mystified a lot of people. There's a website, a company called Deagle, Deagel, and they're a military analysis outfit. And they published a page about 6 years ago that predicted what the populations and GDPs of about 116 different countries would be in the year 2025. And the population for the USA was predicted to be 99 million. Okay. We're now at 330.
350. Oh, okay.
350, whatever, 330, 350 million. And Deagle predicted that the population would be 99 million in 2025. And they never really gave it a wholehearted, hearty, robust kind of explication of how they arrived at that. Also, the GDP was like down to shit. And But it did kind of make you wonder. And most of the other members of the Western Civ Club were in equally bad shape. Britain, I think, was in worse shape than we were. Germany was in terrible shape, et cetera, et cetera. They're all down. The countries that weren't harmed that much were actually China, Russia, a whole bunch of other kind of, non-Western Civ countries. But that was an alarming thing. That got a lot of people thinking. And I'm kind of wondering, how far-reaching this pandemic injury business is going to go.
I've earlier today I had on Dr. Malone for I think the 8th or 9th time, and I've seen his
You've
own.
had him on 9 times?
I had him on 4 times before Rogan did, and then Rogan got all the PR. I was like, dude, people need to be
Damn.
talking shit about my podcast. Get me some subscribers.
Yeah.
I had on McCullough.
Well,
3
he's
times before.
he's a great figure.
Yeah.
He's really he's a brave and valiant and intelligent dude out there. He's really fighting a good fight.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was like, man, where's mine? Why can't the White House attack me? Like, no such thing as bad press. I was like, get me some
Right.
subscribers. I was like, I'll take the heat. I don't give a shit. I'll have, yeah. It's,
but if only Jen Psaki would talk about it.
If only she, I mean, that's my problem is like, I had him on last July. Like, I give me some hate speech charges. Like, let's get me trending. Like, let's call me a white supremacist.
See, I didn't get turned on Robert Malone until I heard that podcast that he did with Brett Weinstein and Steve Kirsch.
That's the one. That's where I first discovered him.
That was like the seminal.
That was the big one.
Podcast.
I've now had on Kirsch and Malone, not together. I need to get Weinstein. I need.
That was year 0 for.
That was.
For
that was
whatever this, whatever
that was
we end up calling this shit.
That was the misinformation Sputnik moment where they they realized, oh fuck, we don't have a lid on this thing. I've watched his progression.
He's gotten pissed off.
I had him on July 1st, 2021. That was episode 495. I had him on again today, Tuesday, March 1st, 2022, for episode 721. I've seen his own progression into just really, let's look at the science of what this is, what his patents are, to this full-on World Economic Forum, trusted news initiative. This is a global lockstep program. The propaganda is, and when I see that, I love conspiracies. I don't believe all of them. I love them because I think reality is stranger than fiction, and thus I think conspiracy theories are better than any fiction book that could be written. That's why I love them. It's this organic, it's organic novels.
Well, Oscar Wilde said, "Life imitates art."
Yeah. So like that's why I love. I've interviewed Charlie Duke, who walked on the moon. I've interviewed him 3 times. Dang. I still love to believe that there are alien structures on the far side of the moon, and I don't care what anyone says. I want to entertain that because the same reason people read Harry Potter. It's fun. But this conspiracy, I'm now looking at as less and less insane. If we have like the tippy top, looking at all these climate models, looking at food, resource scarcity, peak oil, looking at an exponential population explosion. How else would you do it? Like, let's just entertain it. How else would you do it? You can't, it has to be Brave New World. It can't be 1984 because the people will rebel. I think you would introduce a vaccine. I think you would do something like that. And not only that, I don't think that the vaccine, now there are a lot, 24,703 deaths as of today from the VAERS system, which however that accuracy is. To me, I think it would be something a little more passive because, again, if everybody starts dropping, there's going to be widespread revolt. I think what you're probably going to see is it's a passive depopulation or population reduction, and it's because of probably the attack on the ovaries and the testes. That's what I think it will be. So it won't be me taking up arms because my mom died. It will be 20 years down the road and me not really necessarily being able to prove it's why I can't have kids or, why. And I think it will be staggered. I'm sure not everyone that got the vaccine will have those problems. There'll be so much plausible deniability tied in that I think as more time goes on, I don't think it's that absurd at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to think it was batshit. I go, let's stick with the moon conspiracy. Now I'm looking at it and it's like all these lines on the different charts are all kind of hitting this point where we're running out of shit. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
these ruthless people at the top, or maybe you could say, let's really play devil's advocate, people who are going to continue humanity. I don't believe that at all, but they are true believers.
Well, the only reason I could say, that I can imagine that it really wouldn't be is because, if you find out that Klaus Schwab and some gang of dudes, including Bill Gates and a bunch of other people, were actually really coordinating stuff about this, I think that they would be, they'd be snuffed out and as quickly as you could say, Gulbar Nublenkin.
I don't know what that it means.
He was an arms dealer of the 1980s.
Oh, okay. I've read The Arms of Krupp, which is a fantastic book about that arms industry in Germany.
That must have been Klaus Schwab's uncle.
His family. But like,
I think he was connected with some
he
kind of
probably
Nazi industry of some
yeah,
sort.
absolutely. And if not, we'll speculate wildly. Fuck you, Klaus. But I also think, I've interviewed Ken Alabek, who is the head of the Soviet bioweapon program. He defected to the United States.
Oh yeah, I remember him dimly, but he was he's still around, huh?
Oh yeah, no, he's got like a commercial job and he's trying to find a cure for autism. He's an absolute saint.
He's living a normal life.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him.
Yeah, I've interviewed him 8 times. He's the sweetest guy in the world. And is he what?
Has he disclosed a lot of really interesting stuff?
Well, he wrote a book called Biohazard, which is pretty much the whole story. And I had him on here the first step. You got to remember, he wanted to be a physician. And because he was so smart, he was told by the Soviet Union, he's told by the KGB that he is going to be the first deputy. He didn't want to do it. So he truly wanted, he went into medicine. He wanted to uphold the Hippocratic Oath. So
he was a defector.
He defected in 1992. And how he defected is still classified, which means I'm guessing they don't want to burn methods and sources. Mm-hmm. So the first episode, we talked about that. And I really didn't want to push it a whole lot further because he likes it as little as you or I like it. He's like, I don't fucking want to do this. He had to leave his his whole extended family. Point is to argue against my own point that the vaccine rollout would be depopulation is that why wait on a vaccine? Why would you not just vaccinate the few individuals who wanted to survive and then release a virulent pathogen? Why
maybe they just fucked up and they thought that COVID-19 was going to be pretty bad and it just didn't live up to
like a firecracker that didn't go off. They're just like
kind of
fuck.
It was kind of a big project and then they kind of messed it up, I suppose.
Someone just messed up the IPO of COVID. Some intern.
I don't know.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
But the sinister quality of having the vaccine be the agent of depopulation is really pretty sublime. Well, in the Thomas, what is it? The Thomas Burke sense of the sublime. Was he the guy who defined that?
I don't know.
I think.
Maybe
anyway,
they could clear
the sublime being not necessarily something that was just beautiful and wonderful, but also terrifying.
They could clear their own conscience and say you did it voluntarily.
It wasn't. I meant Edmund Burke, and I don't think it was Edmund Burke. I don't remember who said that. I'm sorry.
But anyway, I forgive you.
That concept of the sublime is that this what we consider to be like a view of the rawness and monumental power of nature is not just a thing of beauty, but something that terrifies us. And to some extent, the pandemic thing is a sublime, terrifying agent of civilizational destruction.
Yeah. No, there's a reason why the most watched clips of movies are the destruction scenes, the asteroid hitting, the earthquake.
Oh yeah.
There's something beautiful about supernova is a twinkling star. It's also just disintegrating whole solar systems. Yeah. No, I was gonna say I could see, and we'll wrap it up. I was gonna say, but you could almost see someone like Klaus being able to justify it to himself by saying, we didn't kill anyone. they went and got the shot themselves. It was suicide.
Well, that's a kind of an elegant way of putting it, and it's certainly gosh darn interesting. You know, yeah. In fact, ironically, one of the things that's come up in the last couple of weeks, along with all of the new data from the life insurance
Yeah,
companies that are,
40%.
that are showing unusual statistical rises in the number of deaths, all causes deaths between people from 18 to 60 or so. Um, no, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Fuck.
40% rise.
Yeah.
40% rise in deaths. Um, recent disclosures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Let me try.
Klaus Schwab,
Yeah.
elegant suicide versus murder.
Oh, yeah. 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 Oh, thank you for reminding me.
Gotcha.
I went down a rabbit hole, but one of the elegant side parts of that is that the insurance companies now want to claim that they don't have to make the payouts because people committed suicide by
Saw that.
voluntarily taking the vaccines.
Wasn't that I think that was a ruling in France in like the last like 48 hours. I think
Something like that. But man, is that wild or what?
that is some gaslighting shit. That is,
Yeah,
I saw someone comment on Reddit. They're like, all right, well, when that family goes and burns down that courthouse and hangs the judge, I guess you could argue that judge committed suicide by making that ruling.
exactly.
It's
And like, along with that, I'll tell you one little tiny thing that's really bewildered me for the last 20 years or so.
yeah.
We've had all these school shootings, right?
And they all
Where
stopped.
these pissed off kids who come in,
They all
shoot up the
fucking
school.
stopped with the pandemic.
Well, it kind of did. Yeah. I'll tell you what really mystified me though, why there weren't more people going into hospital business offices and shooting them up. Because
yeah,
because of the tremendous household ruin that the hospitals rain down on people with their charge master insanity.
Mm.
Yeah, you go in there, you take your kid in with a broken arm to the emergency room, and you're just a truck driver or something, and 6 weeks later you get a bill for $15,000.
Yeah, or your wife can't afford the chemo. Yeah,
Yeah,
why would you not go in there just like fuck it, just go in there with an AR and be like, I'm gonna get revenge for my
but
wife.
isn't it weird that no one's done that?
That's never happened.
Yeah,
And
I think it's so weird.
I think it's that, and I also think it's insane that you've never seen it against banks, especially
Yeah,
after '08. How many people lost their home? Tell me that not one
yeah,
person in the nation went to Lehman Brothers, or for better or worse, whether they're not responsible. You're telling me some deranged guy didn't go in there with a
it's
backpack full of
amazing.
tannerite and blow out the lobby, do some Timothy McVeigh shit?
There
Then
you
didn't
go.
happen. You didn't get a
Yeah.
U-Haul and just waltz on into, and well, I guess we'll just wave to the FBI now, but you didn't just drive right into Manhattan, go right up to one of those places, right on the street. Not one.
Well, let's just accept the fact that living on this earth can be a mystifying thing, full of strange mystifications and weird, unexplained, unexplained shit.
I got one more question, and it doesn't really pertain to anything, but I do think it's a very fascinating fact that we never, I guess Christmas 2020, we saw one in Nashville, I think.
Sure.
But there was never once, not before 9/11 and not since, there was never once a car bomb. What the
Yeah.
fuck is that? The
I don't know,
easiest,
man.
cheapest.
I don't understand why someone didn't walk into the Mall of America with a duffel bag full of ordnance and stuff.
It
I don't know why someone didn't take a rocket propelled grenade out of a suitcase or something on K Street in Washington and fire it over Lafayette Square.
Or why
You know
wouldn't 10 people get on a roof in New York and fire 10 RPGs at the Empire State Building?
exactly. All that's mystifying.
To
I mean,
me,
our security can't be that good.
well, to me, it kind of tinfoil hat. To me, it kind of leads to like one of two conclusions. Either the national security state is just so airtight, and I don't believe that to be true,
No.
or the
Plus, it's
terrorist,
full of morons.
yeah, or the terrorist threat has been fabricated for justification for invasion, which we know. and that the reason we haven't seen widespread car bombs, a decentralized attack that would truly cause terror, right? You see the planes hit the World Trade Center. That doesn't scare you too much in suburbia. You're like, well, they're not going to come here. There's no skyscrapers. There's no big. If you want true terror, you would attack Blockbusters and McDonald's.
All right.
None of that to me says they've either caught every single one of these. The terrorists have never thought of it, just excluding the fact that they do it every day all throughout the Middle East.
Sure.
Or that the reason we've seen it is because the intelligence agencies have had no reason to do it.
Well,
It's
there's a sinister thought for you.
It is, but which one is it? You're telling me none of them? No, not one suicide bomber in the U.S.
Don't know.
Not one in 20 years.
I don't spend a whole lot of time, wringing my brain over things like that. But now that you've mentioned it, it's pretty gosh darn strange.
But no, that's just a thought that's always been in my head. It's like, if you really, really, like, I get 9/11. I get the symbolism of attacking, the heart of our finance and the heart of our military. Sure, but you really want to cause widespread destruction? I mean, I guess you could say Pulse nightclub. Didn't the guy say Allahu Akbar? I don't know. Well, as always with this podcast, it wouldn't be a Tommy's podcast if we didn't end up on an FBI and NSA server. So I don't know. Wave to the boys. They're fans. Langley, Fort Meade, Quantico, they're all watching. They always do. Shout out, guys. Turn the lights on and off if you're watching. And yeah. Jim, thanks so much for coming on, man. I'd love to have you on again.
It's been a pleasure, Tommy. I'll come back anytime you want.
You're a cool fucking dude, guy. I like you.
Shucks.
No, I did. No, dude. I don't have a boss. I only have on people I want to talk to.
Let me just remind your listeners that
sure.
They can come to my blog, which comes out every Monday and every Friday morning, Eastern time, 10 o'clock at www.kunstler.com, KUNSTLER.com. The blog is called Clusterfuck Nation. You can probably put that on a search engine and find it that way. And there you go.
Send me and if you've got anything else that you want me to put in the description, just let me know and I'll copy and paste it all. But yeah, dude, I'd love to have you on again. That was fun as fuck. It's as you can tell,
Tommy.
As you can tell, fun. There's no direction to this. It's just fire from the hip. Just whether suburban building materials or questionable questions that will just put me on even more servers. If it wasn't the Secret Service bomb technician I had on who got a little drunk and maybe started telling people how to build explosives, if that one didn't get me, maybe it was this one or having Malone on. They're going to kill me eventually. Whatever.
No, they won't.
Yeah. I think they're
especially
fans.
Not if you're armed.
I think
you can fight them off.
I think they're fans. I like to imagine that they're surveilling me and they're like, this podcast isn't half bad. I'm just like,
hey, we like this guy.
Yeah, they're like, don't kill him just yet. I listened to it on the ride to work. And I'm like, yeah. Once I become a burnout, once I become like Howard Stern, then they can come put one in my head. But right now they're like, dog, I fucking listen to this. It's the only way I can get away from my bitching wife. Like, we can't kill him just yet. It's a bunch of CIA wet works guys. Like, dude, I listen to this when I take my kid to softball. Like, we can't ice him.
And I'm driving to a hit.
That's what I mean. Exactly. They're like, dude, I'm with the Mossad and we're going to take out some sheik in Dubai. They're like, I love this one. We'll kill him in time. And that's maybe what it is. So as long as I keep putting out good episodes, I think they're inclined not to kill me. And I also like to imagine that it's a sort of protection for my guests because they're like, well, we were going to take out Jim, but they had chemistry, man. So fuck, we can't kill him yet either. That's my own deluded ego. It's like, I'm saving lives by having people on here. I'm losing my mind. Jim, thanks for coming on, man. I'll email you or text you the episode when it's up. Please share it around. Everybody listening, please go check out his blog and stay safe.
Okay, we will ride again.
Fuck yeah, man. Thank you so much. God bless.
Okay.
God bless.